The winter wind of 1868 howled like a wounded beast across the Colorado plains, dragging sheets of ice over the open range. Elias Carter rode with his collar turned high, his hat pulled low against the sting. He'd seen cold before, Appomattox, Gettysburg, winters where blood froze in the barrel before man could fire, but nothing like this. The frontier had a way of cutting deeper than any war wound. By the time he spotted the smoke, the sun had already begun to die, just a red smear behind black clouds. The trail bent toward the foothills, where a slant-roof cabin crouched against a bank of snow. The smoke wasn't clean, it was gray and thin, the kind that spoke of something gone wrong. He dismounted, boots sinking to the ankle, hand resting on the butt of his coat. The front door hung open, creaking in the wind. Inside was silence, then a sound. Soft, sharp, like a breath caught in the throat. He stepped inside, eyes adjusting to the dim light of a dying fire. She was there. A woman. No, a girl, maybe mid-20s, half hidden behind a broken table. Her hair was tangled and damp, her skin pale as bone, her eyes wide and wild. A pistol shook in her hands. "Don't come closer," she rasped. Her voice cracked from disuse. "I'll shoot." Elias stopped where he was. "Not here to hurt you," he said quietly. "Just saw the smoke." The girl's grip wavered. Behind her lay a man on the floor, stiff, lifeless, one hand reaching toward a rifle that never got fired. Elias knelt slowly, eyes flicking over the scene. No blood trail, just bruises, frostbite, and death by cold, or maybe despair. "He was my father," she said. "Or was, till last night." Elias nodded. "You got a name?" "June." She hesitated, then added, "Avery." Her lips trembled. "Ain't no reason you should stay, mister. There's nothing here worth saving." He looked at her a moment, seeing more than she said. The cut on her cheek, the torn hem of her dress, the purple mark on her wrist. She'd been through hell. Maybe still was. "I'll get a fire going," he said simply. June stared at him, confused, but said nothing as he moved the hearth, broke the frozen logs apart, and coaxed a flame to life. The cabin filled slowly with warmth and the scent of burning pine. When he turned back, she lowered the pistol. "Why'd you stop?" she asked. "Because you ain't the only one who's been left behind." The wind screamed outside, battering the walls. He glanced toward the door and muttered, "Storm's closing in. We'll ride at dawn." She didn't thank him, didn't smile, just pulled her shawl tighter and sat by the fire, staring at the flames as if afraid they'd vanish too. Hours passed. Snow pressed heavy against the roof, the storm thick as white smoke. Elias cleaned his rifle by the fire, while June huddled in the corner, her eyes reflecting the flames. "You from around here?" he asked, voice quiet. She shook her head. "Northridge. My stepfather owned land there, or said he did." Elias didn't push. He could tell by her tone that the man hadn't known much except cruelty. "You ran," he said softly. Her shoulders stiffened. "You think I should have stayed?" "No. I think you did what you had to." That earned him a small look, a flicker of something human behind the cold. She studied his hands, the rough scars that climbed his knuckles. "You a soldier?" "Was." He didn't elaborate. "Now I move freight, sometimes guard stages." "Why'd you come this way?" He shrugged. "Didn't know I'd find anyone here." June turned back to fire. "No one ever does." The silence grew heavy. Outside, the wind moaned like something dying. Then came a sound, faint, deliberate, a crunch in the snow near the door. Elias froze. His hand went to his revolver. "Stay quiet," he whispered. He moved to the window, peered through the frost-glazed glass. 3 shadows moved beyond the yard, men on horseback. Their shapes flickered in the lamplight, coats long, rifles glinting. "Bounty hunters," June breathed, her face going pale. "They followed me." "What for?" She swallowed. "My stepfather put a price on me. Said I stole from him. Said I was dangerous." Elias's jaw tightened. "You..." She nodded once, barely. He checked his bullets, loaded his rifle, then looked back at her. "Stay low. If they knock, you don't make a sound." June's breath shook as he blew out the lantern. The room plunged into darkness, lit only by the faint orange pulse of the fire. Outside, voices. She's in there. I saw the tracks. Elias stood beside the window, his rifle raised. The door rattled under a boot. "Evening," a man called out. "We're looking for a runaway gal. 5-foot brown hair. Pretty thing with mean streak. Seen anyone like that?" Elias didn't answer. The latch twitched. Another boot hit the door. "She's ours, mister. Step aside, and maybe you live long enough to see tomorrow." Elias's voice came calm, steady. "Ain't no woman here." They laughed. The first shot blasted through the window, splintering what beside his head. Elias fired back instantly. The room filled with gunfire, sharp, deafening, like thunder trapped in wood. June screamed, diving behind the stove. The door burst open and a man stumbled in, shotgun raised. Elias swung the butt of his rifle and cracked it across his face. Blood sprayed. The man fell. Another rushed through the doorway, firing wild. Elias ducked, returned fire. The blast lit the room in a flash of orange. The man dropped. Then came the last one, bigger, meaner, grinning through the smoke. "Didn't figure a ghost like you could shoot straight," he taunted, aiming. The bullet hit Elias's shoulder before he could move. The pain was sharp, white-hot. He fell to one knee. June screamed again, her voice cutting through the chaos. The bounty hunter raised his revolver for a killing shot. June moved. She grabbed the dead man's gun, hands trembling but steady enough, and fired. Once, twice. The hunter fell backward, eyes wide, disbelief frozen on his face. Silence swallowed the room. Only the fire crackled, its light flickering over blood and broken wood. Elias breathed hard, clutching his shoulder. "You okay?" June dropped the pistol, her body shaking. I killed him." "You had to," he said. Her eyes filled. I never even shot a gun before." "You did fine." He forced himself up, tore a strip of cloth from his coat, and pressed it against his wound. "There'll be more coming. We'll bury them come morning." June sank down beside him, trembling. "You should have left me out there." Elias looked at her, tired eyes softening. "No, not this time." Outside, the storm wailed against the windows, sweeping away footprints and blood alike. When morning came, the world was white and silent. The snow had swallowed everything except the bodies half buried by the barn. Elias worked despite the pain in his shoulder, digging shallow graves with the flat of a broken spade. June watched from the steps, arms wrapped tight around herself, hair tangled in the wind. "You don't have to help," he told her. "I want to," she said, stepping into the cold. Together they dragged the last man's body toward the pit. She stared down at the faces, now still, and whispered, "They used to drink with him. My stepfather. They'd laugh while he—" She stopped herself. "Doesn't matter now." Elias covered the bodies with snow, the sound of the shovel dull and final. Back inside, he poured whiskey over his shoulder wound and gritted his teeth. June tore a strip from her dress and tied it around his arm. Her touch was hesitant, careful. "You sure you're not a doctor?" He tried to joke. "Just someone who learned to stop bleeding the hard way." Their eyes met, hers raw and uncertain, his heavy with something he hadn't felt in years, gentleness. She turned away quickly, stoking the fire. "Where will you go?" "South, maybe. There's a ranch near Fort Lyon that needs hands. You could lead me there, too." He looked at her, not answering right away. "You want me to?" She hesitated. "I don't know what I want." He nodded. "Then we'll figure out on the road." Her lips parted, surprised. "You'd take me?" "I don't leave folks to die, Miss Avery." The room fell quiet again. The storm outside had died, leaving a bright, merciless sky. She stepped closer to the window, staring at the light. "When I was little," she murmured, "I used to think someone would come for me, a man on a horse, like in the stories Mama told before she passed. Guess I stopped believing after a while." Elias leaned back in his chair, eyes closing for a moment. "Maybe you just had to wait for the wrong kind of man to pass by. That drew a faint smile, small, broken, but real. She turned toward him. No one ever kissed me, you know. He opened his eyes, meeting hers across the dim cabin. The word hung there, fragile and strange, like a truth neither of them knew what to do with. He didn't move closer, didn't speak, just looked at her, seeing the flicker of life that had returned to her face. The fire popped, sending sparks drifting upward. "Best get some rest," he said finally. "We ride at first light." June nodded and sat near the hearth. Elias stared into the flames, his mind a storm of memory. His wife's face, the war, the years lost to silence. But when he looked at June, something stirred, something unspoken. Outside, the first light of dawn spread over the snow, pale and quiet. Inside, warmth slowly returned to the cabin, fragile, uncertain, but real. And for the first time in a long while, Elias Carter believed the cold might finally break. They left the cabin at dawn. The snow had hardened overnight into a brittle crust, and the horses' hooves cracked it with every step. Elias rode ahead, his wound bound tight beneath his coat, his breath a white fog in the air. June followed behind on a borrowed mare, wrapped his spare coat that hung loose around her frame. The world looked endless, just white and wind and the distant blue hum of mountains. The silence between them was deep, but not empty. Every so often she'd glance at him, as if measuring the man who had fought for her, bled for her, and then decided to stay. By midday, the wind began to rise again, biting through the seams of their coats. Elias pointed to a line of trees along a frozen creek. "We'll rest there," he said. June nodded, her cheeks raw from cold. She slid off the mare and stumbled a little, and used the saddle. Elias caught her arm. "You all right?" She nodded again, though her lips were blue. "I'll live." He gave a faint smile. "That's the spirit." They built a small fire against the base of a fallen log. Elias shared what little jerky he had left. June chewed slowly, staring into the flames. "You could have left me back there," she said suddenly. "Would have been easier." "Maybe," he answered. "But easier ain't always right." She looked at him, eyes softening. "Why help me, really?" He shrugged, tossing a stick into fire. "Maybe I saw someone who deserved better than what the world gave her." The words hung between them. When the wind died, they mounted again, following the creek south. The sky darkened by afternoon, turning violet and gray. A wolf howled somewhere in the timberline, long and mournful. By the time they reached the river crossing, the storm had returned. The current was half frozen, a wide ribbon of ice and black water twisting through the valley. "We'll have to cross," Elias said. "No way around." June stared at the churning water. "That'll kill us." "It'll kill us faster if we stay on this side," he replied. "Tracks will lead them right to us." He tied his hat down, tightened the saddle straps, and urged his horse forward. The animal balked but stepped into the current. Ice cracked under its hooves, water splashing high as Elias guided it slow and steady. Halfway across, the ice gave way. The horse plunged, flailing. Elias lost his grip and vanished into the freezing current. "Elias!" June screamed. Without thinking, she leapt from her horse and grabbed the rope tied to his saddle horn. The cold bit through her fingers like knives, but she pulled with everything she had. The current dragged him down, twisting him under the sheet of ice. She screamed again, bracing her feet on the frozen edge, and hauled until her arms burned. Finally, his hand broke the surface. She caught it, pulled again. One last surge, and he was up, gasping, coughing, water pouring from his coat. They collapsed together on the far bank, trembling and soaked. The horses stood nearby, shaking out ice. Elias looked at her through dripping hair. "Reckon you just saved my hide." June tried to smile through chattering teeth. "Guess we're even now." He reached out, brushing a strand of wet hair from her face. His hand lingered a moment longer than it should have. "Let's get a fire going," he said finally. They found a small cave not far from the river. The fire crackled, filling the space with warmth. Steam rose from their drying clothes. For a long while, neither spoke. Then June said quietly, "You don't talk much about what you lost." He stared into the fire. "Ain't much worth telling." She looked at him. You ever love someone? He hesitated, then nodded. Once. She didn't wait long after the war. Couldn't blame her. I wasn't the same when I came back. June's eyes softened. Maybe no one really comes back from things like that. He looked up at her, surprised by the truth in her tone. The storm howled outside, but inside, for the first time, the world felt warm again. They rode into Ridge Hollow 2 days later, a wind-beaten town tucked between ridges. Little more than a saloon, a general store, and a half-built church with no bell. The streets were mud, the people rough. Elias knew they couldn't stay long, but his shoulder wound had worsened and the horses needed feed. He handed June a few coins. Stay close. Keep your head down. She nodded. I can handle myself. He almost smiled. I know. They tethered the horses and stepped into the saloon. The air inside was thick with smoke and sweat. Piano keys clanked somewhere in the corner, offbeat and half-drunk. Heads turned as soon as June walked in. Her beauty was the kind that drew attention even beneath dirt and scars. A man at the bar smirked. Evening, miss, he drawled. You lost, or just looking to be found? Elias's jaw tightened. Leave her be. The man laughed. Didn't hear her complaining. Stranger. Elias turned slowly. You'll hear me instead. Before the drunk could blink, Elias's fist met his jaw with a sound like cracking wood. The man hit the floor hard. The room went quiet. The barkeep lifted his hands. Now, no need for trouble. Elias tossed a coin onto the counter. For the glass he broke. They turned to leave, but a deputy stepped out from a corner table, badge catching the light. Hold it right there, he said. Name Sheriff Holcomb. We got reports of 3 bounty hunters shot dead north of here. You wouldn't happen to know anything about that, would you? Elias met his stare evenly. No, sir. Just passing through. Holcomb's eyes narrowed. Funny thing, they were riding after a girl. Brown hair, scar on her cheek. June froze. The sheriff saw it. Well, I'll be. Looks like the lady's memory ain't what it used to be. Elias stepped between them. You best think real hard about your next words, Sheriff. The man's hand hovered near his revolver. You threatening the law? I'm threatening anyone who draws on me. The silence stretched. Then the sheriff smiled, thin, mean. Reckon you'll hang either way. The sound of a pistol cocking cut through the air. Elias moved first. Gunfire shattered the calm. Bottles burst, with splintered, men dove for cover. June ducked behind a table, hands over her ears. Elias fired twice, hitting the sheriff in the leg and another man in the shoulder. He grabbed June's hand and pulled her toward the back door. Go! He shouted. They burst into the alley, mounting their horses as shouts rose behind them. Bullets hissed past, cutting through the rain. Hold tight, Elias yelled, spurring his horse hard. They thundered down the main road, past the church and out into the open plain. The sheriff's men gave chase. Muzzle flashes sparked behind them, brief bursts of light in the gray dusk. Elias returned fire once, twice. Then his horse stumbled in a rut, nearly throwing him. June grabbed the reins, steadying him. Don't you dare fall now, she shouted. They rode through the canyon until night swallowed the trail. The gunfire faded into echoes. Finally, Elias slowed, breathing hard. Blood soaked his sleeve again. We can't keep running, June said. We'll rest soon, he muttered, eyes scanning the dark ridge ahead. They found shelter in an old church ruin. Charred timbers and cracked glass, a roof half collapsed. Elias led the horses inside, then sank down, pale and shaking. June knelt beside him. You're bleeding again. Just a graze, he lied. She tore the hem of her dress and pressed it against the wound. Her hands trembled, but she didn't stop. You're going to die trying to save me, she whispered. He caught her wrist, eyes fierce. Not dying. Not tonight. They built a small fire from broken pew wood. The flicker of flame painted the walls in amber and shadow. Rain tapped against the shattered glass, soft and endless. June sat close, watching him. You ever get tired of saving people? He smirked faintly. Most times, they don't want saving. I didn't either, she said. Not until you showed up. He looked at her, something raw and unspoken behind his eyes. You shouldn't thank me. I'm not. Her voice trembled. I'm trying to understand. He leaned back, the firelight tracing the hard lines of his face. You want to understand something, June? You can't outrun pain. Not out here. It follows you same as your own shadow. But sometimes, if you let someone walk beside you, it don't feel as heavy. She swallowed, her throat tight. You don't talk like most men. That a bad thing? No, she said softly. Just means you've seen too much. The silence between them grew warm. She reached out hesitant and touched his hand. His fingers closed around hers. For a moment, time stood still. I used to think no one could ever love me, she said, her voice barely a whisper. No one ever kissed me. Not once. Elias stared at her, at the firelight dancing across her face, the mix of strength and fragility in her eyes. Slowly, he reached up, his thumb brushing her cheek. Then it's about damn time someone did, he murmured. The kiss was gentle, not hungry but aching. The world outside ceased to exist. The storm, the gunman, the fear, all melted into that one moment of warmth and trembling truth. When they finally broke apart, she leaned against him, tears glimmering in her lashes. Why'd you do that? She whispered. Because you deserved it, he said simply. They sat together long into the night, the fire burning low, the sound of rain fading to silence. By dawn, the clouds had lifted. Light spilled to the broken glass, golden and pure. Elias stirred, wincing from his wound. June was still beside him, her head resting on his shoulder. He brushed a hand through her hair and whispered, We'll head south. Start fresh. She opened her eyes, sleepy but smiling. And if they find us again, then they'll wish they hadn't. She laughed softly, a sound he hadn't heard from her before. For the first time, she looked less like a ghost and more like someone alive again. The sun rose higher, painting the church ruins in gold. Elias stood, holstered his gun, and turned to her. Ready? June nodded. I think I've been ready all my life. They stepped out into the new light together, leaving behind the ashes of what had been, carrying only what mattered, the will to keep going and the fragile promise of something more. The morning came quiet, too quiet. No birds, no rustle of wind to the broken church timbers, only the distant groan of the plane stretching awake beneath a red horizon. Elias stood outside, hat low over his brow, eyes scanning the ridgeline. The storm had passed, leaving the world washed and still, the air sharp enough to taste. June packed their few supplies, humming softly under her breath, though her voice trembled at the edges. They were alive, but the peace felt thin as glass. Elias mounted up, grimacing as his shoulder protested. June followed, her hair catching the early sun like firelight. Together they rode toward the open plain. The earth steamed faintly from the night's rain, and far ahead, the trail split into two, south toward safety, or east toward the hills where danger always waited. Which way? June asked. Elias hesitated. South's longer, but cleaner ground. She nodded, then south. They'd gone maybe an hour when the first shot rang out. The sound tore through the morning air, sharp, final. Elias's hat flew from his head. A bullet hole burned through the brim. He dove from his horse, pulling June down with him behind a fallen log. Where? She gasped. Ridge, he said, pointing. They've been tracking us. Another shot split the silence, splintering bark inches from her head. He drew his revolver, eyes narrowing. Stay low. She gripped his arm. Elias, there's too many. He gave a tight smile. Ain't about how many, June. It's about who's left standing. The riders appeared over the rise. 5 of them, faces wrapped in scarves, rifles glinting in the sun. At their head rode Sheriff Holcomb, leg bound from their last encounter, but hatred burning in his eyes. Don't make this harder, boy, he shouted. Hand over the girl, and you can keep breathing. Elias fired an answer. One of the riders tumbled from his horse, landing hard. Guess that's a no, Holcomb snarled. The others fanned out, circling. Gunfire exploded, cracks, shouts, the hiss of bullets slicing air. Elias rolled, firing twice, then ducked as a slug tore through the log near his ear. "June," he called. "Get to the creek. Follow it south. I'm not leaving you." "Do it." But before she could move, a rider broke from the flank and charged. June screamed as the horse thundered toward her. Elias swung his rifle up, fired once. The man pitched backward off his saddle. The horse reared, crying out. June scrambled toward Elias, eyes wide. "You're hit." He looked down, blood dark in his side. Just another scratch. The lie tasted like iron. Holcomb's men pressed closer, using the rocks for cover. Elias's ammo ran low, 6 rounds, maybe less. He reloaded quick, teeth clenched. "Looks bad," June whispered. He met her gaze. "Then we make it count." They moved together, firing in rhythm, his precision, her courage. She'd never held a gun before last night, but her hands were steady now, her jaw set. When one of Holcomb's men rushed the left flank, she dropped him with a clean shot. "Nice," Elias muttered, breathless. "Learn from the best," she said, reloading. The exchange of fire stretched on, echoing through the valley. Smoke hung heavy, then silence. "Think that's all of them," she whispered. Elias frowned. "No, he's still out there." A faint creak, the sound of boots on stone. Elias turned just as Holcomb stepped from behind the ridge, rifle leveled. "End of the road, boy," the sheriff said. "That woman's worth more alive than you'll ever be." Elias aimed back, but his hand shook from blood loss. Holcomb's shot came first. The impact knocked Elias backward, breath leaving his lungs in a ragged gasp. June screamed, firing wildly. The sheriff ducked behind a boulder, reloaded, and shouted, "Throw the gun, girl. I'll make it quick." She crawled to Elias's side, tears cutting through the dirt on her face. No, stay with me." His eyes fluttered. "You run, June." "I won't." "Please," he breathed. "Don't let it end here." Then, through the haze of pain, he smiled faintly. "There's dynamite in the saddlebag. The church ruins. Go." Her breath caught. "Elias." "Go." Bullets tore into the earth beside her. June grabbed the bag, heart pounding, and ran. Holcomb shouted, firing after her, but she vanished among the rocks. He turned back toward the log and froze. Elias stood again, bleeding, swaying, his revolver raised. "You talk too much," he said. They fired at the same time. Holcomb's bullet hit Elias square in the chest. Elias's shot hit true between the sheriff's eyes. Both men fell. June heard the shots as she reached the ridge. She stopped, trembling, then looked back. Smoke drifted upward. She dropped to her knees. The dynamite bag slipped from her grasp. For a long time, she couldn't move. Finally, she forced herself up and ran back through the smoke, stumbling over bodies, calling his name. "Elias! Elias!" He lay half in the mud, half in sunlight, one hand still clutching the gun. His eyes opened faintly as she knelt beside him. "Hey!" he whispered, voice faint as wind. "You made it." She pressed her forehead to his. "We made it." He smiled, blood on his lips. "Guess so." "Hold on," she said. "I'll find help." "Don't," he murmured. "Ain't no fixing this." Tears blurred her vision. "Don't you dare say that." He reached up, brushed her cheek with trembling fingers. "I told you once, easier ain't always right. Please, promise me something," he said softly. "Anything. Don't let what they did make you bitter. You got a good heart, June. Keep it that way." Her sobs came harder. "I can't do this without you." "Yes, you can." His eyes began to fade. "You already did." His hand slipped from hers. She screamed his name, shaking him, refusing to believe the stillness. The sun climbed higher, casting gold across the dead and the living alike. The wind picked up, whispering through the grass. By the time the light reached his face, Elias' heart was gone. June buried him beneath the lone cottonwood tree, overlooking the river. The sky that morning was clear, a vast pale blue stretching forever. She placed his hat on the cross she built from driftwood, the brim torn from bullets, the crown stained dark. For long while she stood there, silent, her hand resting on the rough wood. The wind tugged her hair across her face. Gentle now. You said easier ain't always right, she whispered. So I'll do the hard thing. I'll keep going. The horses grazed nearby, restless but waiting. She saddled Elias's mare, the stronger one, and turned south, the way he'd planned. The road stretched endless ahead, dotted with sage and stone. Behind her, the grave faded from sight, but not from her heart. As she rode, memories came like flashes. The warmth of his hand, his laughter low and rare, the way he'd looked at her as if seeing someone worth saving. By dusk, she reached a small trading post near the river junction. The owner, a weathered woman with gray braids, eyed her suspiciously until June pulled out Elias's badge from his saddlebag, an old cavalry insignia, polished by years of wear. He was a good man, the woman said softly. The best, June answered. The woman nodded. You heading south? June glanced at the horizon. Yes, somewhere quiet. The woman pointed. There's a ranch near the border, burned once but still standing. Belonged to a man named Hart. You kin. June's breath caught. He never told me he owned land. The woman smiled faintly. Didn't tell many. Built it after the war. Said he wanted something to outlast the killing. That night, June slept in the barn, the stars spilling bright through the roof. The world felt wide and empty, but she wasn't afraid. When dawn broke, she saddled up again and followed the woman's directions. By midday, she saw it. The ranch Elias had built. The gates hung crooked, fences broken, but the house still stood, proud and stubborn against the wind. She dismounted slowly, walking across the yard. The door creaked open beneath her touch. Dust hung in the sunlight, and the air smelled faintly of cedar and ash. She found his rifle leaning against the wall, a photo on the mantel. Elias younger, smiling beside another man in uniform. She traced the frame with her fingers. I'll take care of it, she whispered. For you. For the next days, she worked, fixed the roof, fed the horses, cleared the fields. Her hands blistered, her muscles screamed, but she didn't stop. At night, she'd sit on the porch, staring at the stars. Sometimes she'd imagine his voice beside her, quiet and steady, telling her stories about the wars, the plains, the way the world used to be. Weeks passed, then months. The land began to change. Grass grew again where fire had once burned. Birds returned. The ranch felt alive, like it was breathing through her. One evening, as the sun dipped low, she heard hooves on the trail. She stood, hand on her revolver, heart thudding. A rider approached, dusty, tired, wearing a deputy's badge. You June Hart? He asked. She blinked. Hart. He nodded toward the marker by the gate. That's what it says. Elias Hart's widow. She looked at the carving she hadn't noticed before, his name etched deep into the wood. He must have marked the land long before he met her. I guess I am, she said quietly. The deputy tipped his hat. Came to tell you Holcomb's men are done. Town's cleaned up. Word is, you two brought justice farther than the law ever could. June smiled faintly. He'd like that. The man nodded. Take care of yourself, Mrs. Hart. When he rode away, she turned back toward the house, her heart heavier and lighter all at once. That night, she lit a lantern on the porch and watched the plains stretch out before her, endless and wild. I hope you see it, Elias, she whispered to the wind. The life you saved didn't end. It just started. The wind moved through the grass like a whisper, soft and sure. And somewhere far beyond the hills, she imagined him smiling,